Donnie Darko is a psychological horror and science fiction cult film directed by Richard Kelly. The film follows a troubled teenager, our main protagonist Donnie, who struggles to deal with his mental illness while surrounded by a white picket fence culture of suburban America that tries to bury and conform Donnie to the culture rather than help him. Simultaneously, Donnie has to deal with the reality that the world will end in less than a month, and does whatever he believes he has to in an attempt to stop it from happening. Oh, and did I mention the Nightmare Bunny Rabbit? While the narrative of the film is very engaging, the film doesn't particularly excel in its cinematography, although it's still competently shot with some scenes that are much more memorable than others. One of my favorite parts of this film, however, is the score, which is mainly occupied by 80s hits like Head Over Heels and Mad World by Tears for Fears. Throughout the film, you'll realize that the particular tracks they use during certain scenes is capable of making an okay scene into a fantastic scene, and this is done various times throughout the film. Donnie Darko presents itself as a pretty standard science fiction and psychological horror movie, but it actually has a lot to say about adolescence, agency, free will, individuality, society, and even criticizes white Christian conservative American suburbias. Donnie Darko does a pretty good job throughout its runtime elaborating on its themes, and uses Donnie's English class as a platform for these wider discussions. Donnie's English professor introduces the students to a short story called The Destructors, written by Graham Greene. In this story, a group of kids flood an old man's house and steal his money from under his mattress, ultimately deciding that they wouldn't spend the money, but to burn it instead. When Donnie's teacher asks him for his opinion, Donnie replies with, "Destruction is a form of creation, so the fact that they burn the money is ironic. They just want to see what happens when they tear the world apart. They want to change things." The film doesn't shy away from these ideas. Not long after the scene, Donnie mirrors the actions from the book to flood his own school and burn down a man's house. Agency was another pattern that was addressed in this movie, as Donnie constantly questions whether his entire life is predetermined by a divine force and if he really has any free will at all. Being a young man with some sort of psychosis, Donnie's constant anxiety about his fate is amplified by his mental illness. While researching and interpreting the themes in Donnie Darko, I found Emma Radley, who elaborated on the theme of agency in her book. Emma Radley discusses, "Psychosis allows for a more radical form of agency, and whether the act of choosing psychosis can have positive and meaningful effects on a restrictive and destructive symbolic matrix." In other words, she was referring to the fact that although Donnie may be suffering from a form of psychosis on top of his supernatural encounters, he actually may have received a blessing, as he has more agency than any other person on the face of the planet, even if that agency doesn't exist. Jeff King also addresses in his book review for the film, Donnie Darko seems to pitch itself clearly against Reagan and Bush-era fundamentalism and moral simplicities, a position that might also apply to the politics of its own time, especially given the presence of another Bush in the White House at the time of its release. As King stated, the film increasingly targets the conservative America that was prevalent during this time period. Donnie Darko attempts to address the double standard that has historically been prevalent in conservative views during this time, such as family values, regulation of certain curriculum, the freedom to make your own judgments and choices pertaining to difficult questions such as free will without being looked down upon by the dominant religious group. Donnie Darko is a film that attempts to tackle various themes and ideas ranging from young teen romance, mental illness, fate and free will, and even the state of modern Christianity and conservative values. While the film is attempting to undertake a wide variety of topics and themes, it certainly leaves a lot to be desired in some respects. Ideas like that of agency and free will are left up in the air with no real answer for Donnie, and while the film does criticize conservative America for justifiable reasons, it does little to offer a solution. I would still say the film was culturally relevant, as it not only sparked a love for independent films, but also brought about a few good questions about our own free will and individuality. As stated before, Donnie Darko is a remarkable independent film that throws a lot of themes and critiques at the viewer, but it does fall short of piecing together all of the story threads into a concise idea. If I were Richard Kelly, I would have stuck to the main themes and critiques the film was obviously going for and elaborated on those themes just a little bit more. Wisecrack on YouTube took a dive at analyzing these very same ideas about Donnie Darko in their video analysis, Donnie Darko, Is It Deep or Dumb? And ultimately came to the same conclusion. The film just doesn't commit to any one main idea. Wisecrack examines almost all of the same narrative themes and patterns, but their conclusive statement for which pattern was the most prevalent throughout the film was the critique on upper-middle-class Christian conservative suburbs. Wisecrack states that Donnie Darko's world-building, weird time travel, adolescent rebellion, and supernatural events are all forms of the ultimate escapism for those stuck in a white picket fence hellhole. Donnie in this context is living a dream, taking control of his own fate and breaking out of the monotony of everyday suburban life. Wisecrack also states that this is why so many people, young people in particular, resonated with Donnie Darko and its strange qualities. or some people just really dig a movie about a guy in a bunny suit.